right, guys. Hey, it's me, Professor Wright, over at Eastern New Mexico University, with another quick demonstration video for you guys. This one is not really one that applies to just throwing or to just hand building. This is actually one that's just about how to sort of clean up and finish the bottom of a piece that you have decided, you're kind of done with, and you just want, a lot of times when you're working on the table or on a board, you get a little bit like crummy or sort of squished down portions of the base of your piece that you might want to clean up. Here's a good example, right? I have a few pots here off screen that I'm going to teach you how to clean up. I'm using thrown vessels for this demonstration, but it applies to hand building pieces as well, pinch pieces or slab pieces that you're finishing up and you want to clean up the bottom. You can use these same techniques. But yeah, this is what I'm talking about, especially when it comes off the wheel. You get this little bit of a rough edge. And again, yeah, if it's coming off of a board because you were hand building, you can get the same sort of thing. And so yeah, what today's video is about is how to clean those up. And like I said, regardless of where you're at in my class, yeah, this should be helpful. These videos are great for anybody that misses a class, or if I'm out for any reason, or if we ever have to do like a hybrid week or something, in class. So hopefully, yeah, why you're watching these videos, and yeah, hopefully they are supplemental. Even if you see the live demo, it can help. But anyway, yeah, so let's talk about how to clean up the bottom of the pot. Clean up, right? Just that finishing touch. So first of all, what I'm going to demonstrate is how to do it when the piece is leather hard. This is the ideal time for doing this sort of cleanup step, okay, is leather hard. And just to talk a little bit, if you are unfamiliar, if we haven't gone over in class the stages of clay yet, I usually go over it in my hand building classes, but also, if you are doing your throwing lessons first with me before you've done hand building, to go over that. Basically, the stages of clay, any clay that's unfired is called greenware, right? No matter what, if it's wet clay, if it's dried out, if it's leather hard, any of that, before it's fired, it's called greenware. Within that, we have, just like fresh, workable, wet clay that we have shaped into pots. We also have slip, which is going to be really important when you learn to attach things and stuff like that. And what slip is basically wet clay. It's what your bucket fills up with while you're throwing or while you're working with clay. It's clay that's it's more water than it is clay. It's just like slimy, goopy stuff, and it's really great for joining together pieces. In fact, it's one of the most important parts of joining together two pieces of clay that you've shaped and want to connect. So yeah, we have slip, we have wet clay, then we have clay that is in the in-between stage of like, it's kind of dried out. It's dried out enough that I'm picking this up and it's not misshaping, right? I got a few of these. They're not misshapen. They're not squishing in my hands, but if I really wanted to, I could change the shape. I could smudge them. They're cold to the touch, right? They're still a little wet. This is the perfect time for this cleanup step, as well as when you want to add stuff, when you want to add handles or you want to add certain kinds of decoration to it. This is a great stage, okay, leather hard. And there's a lot of different kind of stages to leather hard. There's really wet leather hard that can be good for maybe when you're coil building and you want to keep building quickly, you're not too worried about support. Wet leather hard's good. If you want to add handles, just kind of like a nice middle leather hard. Some carving is done when it's like a little bit drier leather hard. But then after that, we have what we call bone dry, which is a piece that has been set out in the air and all of the water, just like room temperature water, has evaporated out of it. It is totally dried out. It's basically dried out dirt clod at this point. I'm going to teach you how to clean stuff up at this stage, but the big thing is, at this stage, you can't add anything to this. You can't add parts, you can't add handles. All you can really do is maybe clean it up, you can sand it, and maybe do some types of carving to this. But yeah, that's bone dry. Anyway, and yeah, all of those fall underneath greenware, or under the umbrella term greenware, just unfired. Once it's fired, typically the first firing is what we would call a bisque fire. I don't have any of that on hand, but it's basically clay getting to over 1,000 degrees, right? It's typically in the low temperature ranges, like 06 to 04, right? Remembering that O is like negative, so like -6, -4. But anyway, yeah, that's just fired enough that it's ready to glaze, and it is permanently ceramic, but it is not watertight just yet, right? And then you glaze it, and you fire that up to even hotter. The clay reaches maturity, and the glaze melts, and it becomes glazed pottery, and it's finished for the most part, unless you want to do some, post-firing stuff. So anyway, that was a quick blurb about the stages of clay. Good for me to get out there in this video, but anyway, so once you get to, yeah, you're ready to clean up. Like I said, the ideal stage for cleaning up a piece, cleaning up this base, is this leather hard stage. So what I usually do, honestly, I say do the leather hard stage because it's so simple. All you really need to do, depending on how big this is, if it's small, like what I often get when I'm finished throwing, just like a little ridge here, all you got to do, take your thumb and kind of rub it across the bottom here, and you can get rid of that little extra ridge down at the bottom. You can even sort of push in this little lip of clay, soften it with your thumb. There is no harm. This is a very common technique. Just literally taking your thumb and softening this up with your thumb is a great way to finish this step. I like this too because it leaves a little shelf of clay that's really great for two reasons. Number one, when I want to dip this piece, when I want to hold it and put it into a bucket, this little lip, this ridge of clay is really nice for me to hold on to. I honestly like the aesthetic. It goes with my wavy kind of surface that I leave on the pots anyway. To do this, I'll even like exaggerate this sometimes and push little like thumb marks into this. And yeah, basically have this little ledge for aesthetics, for the ability to hold it when I'm dipping glazes. But then also another really handy use for this lip, especially if it gets bigger even, is if you want to use a really runny glaze. A lot of times this lip will catch it and prevent it from running onto your shelf. But you can still use a runny glaze and yeah, have this to prevent it. But let's say you don't like that. That is okay. Let's say you want to shave even more of the clay off. You really don't like this ridge. There's no reason you can't take something like a trim tool or a knife and just shave a little bit of that clay away. If you do this, if you want to cut, I do recommend doing like really sort of long pulls. Don't do little like sort of choppy trims. You don't want to do that. You want to do long nerve pulls, unless you have like a booger or something, like a big bump that you really need to just carve in small bits. For the most part, you want long pulls that's just going to evenly kind of smooth that clay out. Just not my favorite method, but if you want a smooth rim, you can remove more of this clay with your rib before you pull it off of the wheel. But yeah, that little bit that's just always left, you can kind of trim away with your trim tool. And then, you know, that's going to leave some kind of choppy marks and stuff from the trim tool. So you'll just take a regular old yellow sponge and you can smooth that out. Yep. Good to go. No reason you can do this from the beginning, whatever. At this leather hard stage, what's great is you can just use a plain old yellow sponge and smooth that. Boom, good to go. Another method is to actually just set this on the table and roll it around a little bit like this, kind of at an angle, 45-degree angle. Roll it, boom, boom. Look at that. Nice and cleaned up. And then you can take your thumb and smooth it more, right? Whatever. You got all kinds of options, but it's easiest to exercise all these different options. This is a little soft, so my thumbprints are getting real dramatic here. I like to do this. Oh, some people also like to do something where they like push in the base with their palm. That's fine too. If that seems like too much, you're too scared about the thickness of the bottom of your pot, don't do that. Don't worry about that. But yeah, that leather hard stage is the best. Then this is also when typically I do this before I'm going to add a handle or some kind of decoration to a piece. And this is also when I would go ahead and stamp it with my signature, even before I put the handles on. Okay, now that's not all that I'm going to show you today. I want to do another little kind of cleaning demo for what you do if you end up with this, right? Say you forget to cover it in plastic, or a lot of times in my class on the first day of throwing, I don't teach students to bother with plastic. It's just too much on this first day, and I teach them to let these dry out, and then I can use these as a demonstration of how to clean when it's bone dry, because it's totally possible. You can't add stuff to this, but as I said, you can clean this up. You can trim away. So what's that gonna look like? Well, first off, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna be sanding and cutting away dried up clay, which is gonna create dust, and so you need to put on a dust mask and be sure you're not working around somebody without any kind of dust protection. Sorry, I hope that my hair isn't too bad for me to do that. But yeah, you want to put this on. I might take my glasses off too because I'll fog up. But yeah, you want to use this to prevent too much dust inhalation, and then in addition to that, you want to work on top of your water bucket or over the slip bucket or something, you know, a reclaim bucket, to make sure that the dust doesn't get too widespread, and you can just clean this up directly, you know, kind of get the dust directly into water. Okay, now, based on what I just said, you may think you want to clean this up with a wet sponge. You do not. Once this is bone dry, you really don't want to reintroduce any water. I've seen students that come in and they aren't they don't listen to me. I hope you guys can hear me through the mask and over the person driving by in their loud pickup. But I've seen students literally take pots like this and dip them in water, thinking that they're going to rehydrate them to the leather hard stage. And it kind of might seem like it's working at first, but I promise you at some point it's going to crack apart and fall apart. And so you just really don't want to reintroduce water to this. So you can't really clean it up with the old yellow sponge. What you want to do is sort of trim away at it with a trim tool, maybe a needle tool, or my favorite is the fettling knife, just the sharp end of a fettling knife. And you're not gonna like cut into it. What you're gonna do is just sort of like a backswing or something, right? You're gonna use that sharp edge, and I'm kind of leaning it away from the direction I'm going. And I just compress or push into this corner, right? Now I need to do this over the water. And it's basically going to like trim away, sand away that little bit of sharp edge, okay? And I can do that on the bigger edge too. You can see how quickly that'll get rid of stuff. Okay, that's pretty nice, pretty smooth. Okay, you can do this with a trim tool if you want. I find it's a little bit more difficult because the trim tools really aren't sharp enough to do what I want. But remember, you're not cutting. It's the same thing too, where you want to do like really kind of like long pulls. Don't do little choppy cuts, and the same with the trim tool. Don't do little choppy things. You want to use long, like smooth sort of shaving, right? You're just shaving this edge, okay? That's what you want. For that, that's a start. You might be able to call that done, but a good chance you've left it a little choppy now after that. So that's where these guys are going to come in. These are, you can call them greenware sponges if you buy them from the ceramic supply store. No shot at that. That's fine. They're kind of cut and designed to be really helpful. But really, all this is a Scotch-Brite like laundry, or not laundry, a dish cleaner, okay? Sometimes you can use the green dish cleaner. Most people do that. They call them like greenie weenies. But I just got the blue Scotch-Brites. And we're going to use this to sand this down. You don't want to use sandpaper because it fills up too quickly. For sanding, you want to use these pads. And there's no water in this. This is dry. This is a dry Scotch-Brite pad. And all you want to do, sorry, I got a little water on my thumb here. Ooh, got that and see that. You don't want that. It dries too quick anyway. But yeah, this is, dry thumb, dry pad, sorry. We're going to just take this and run it across the surface, and you'll see really quickly, I don't know how easy it is to see in this video, but it sands down those like choppy marks from the knife super well, okay? This does everything you need as far as sanding. You don't need sandpaper, you don't need any water, just a dry Scotch-Brite pad is gonna start to pull away, and then you might kind of dust. This is gonna be a really dusty process, so be careful. But yeah, flake that dust into your water. No harm, no foul, good to go. You can even use the Scotch-Brite to sand down little finger marks and smudges that you've got on the piece. All kinds of stuff, softening edges, different things like that. And remember, this is not just something you can do to thrown pieces. You can do either one of these cleaning methods, leather hard or bone dry, and use the Scotch-Brite pads on dry coil pieces and slab pieces as well, right? So this is a pretty handy tool. Now, one thing I do want to say, if you sand your pieces, a lot of students, once they learn they can do this, they like to go crazy sanding. Be sure you wear the mask, that's one thing. Be sure you clean up the dust afterwards. And then another thing you're going to want to think about that I usually point out. Okay, so once you finish this, there's going to be a little bit of dust residue, no matter what you do, that's just left on the piece. When this comes out of bisque, you want to run anything that you've sanded under water, right? You want to run it under running water in the sink to get all that dust off. If you don't, I don't see it happen often, but occasionally as that dust stays there and it's sort of still there after bisque, when you go to glaze, the glaze doesn't stick as well. I've really mostly just do that theoretically. It could be a problem. For the most part, it's not, but you don't want to forget. You don't want dusty pots. It could pinhole anyway if you've got little bits of flaky dust, and it just causes problems in glazing. So you want to rinse all that off if you ever sand, dry sand, okay? But yeah, you can also use a needle tool to put your initials here, right? It's too dry for you to just stamp, but you could carve into it. You can also carve designs into bone dry if you're very, very careful and you've left enough clay. Yeah, all kinds of stuff can still be done with these, sanded, cleaned them up. Yeah, all good to go. You can't add handles, but you can still work with it. Yeah, and just be sure you wear a dust mask. All right, I think that's about it as far as cleaning the pots. Just remember, like I said, it can be done with hand-built or thrown pieces. And the big one, I always have to remind students, don't use sandpaper, use a Scotch-Brite, and use it dry, okay? Or greeny weenie, whatever you're using. Greenware sponge, just do that, and you should be good to go, okay? I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.